8 months ago, we learned that Lucius looked into the future. In fact, he looked into many futures looking for all the possible timelines where his war against the world would end in his defeat. And of the thousands of timelines he saw, there was only one that led to him losing. And that one singular timeline was not only his greatest fear, but also his greatest source of inspiration, because it paved the way for his ultimate plan to take over the world, starting with the destruction of the Grin Barrel family. You see, while Chapter 360 is mostly showcasing the action between all three of the major fights we currently have going on, Meryl Yona versus Morris, Noel versus Aesir, and obviously Yuno versus Lucius, it also gives us an insane amount of insight into things we could previously only speculate on through Lucius's inner monologue. For example, we now know that the sole reason for the Zogratis family's rebellion against the Spade Kingdom was due to Lucius using his future sight, seeing that in the timeline where Yuno was allowed to grow up lovingly under his parents as the Spade Prince would be the timeline where he would be at his strongest. Guided by the owners of Sun and Moon magic, Yuno would be taught how to fully master his star magic and pose the biggest possible threat to Lucius. So, to make sure that timeline didn't come to pass, Lucius incited his siblings to take over the kingdom, but he never intended for Yuno to die. No, in fact, it seemed that Lucius always planned on Yuno surviving the onslaught and being spirited away to the Clover Kingdom, where he would grow up relatively the same way he did currently, gaining the four-leaf grimoire, forming a contract with Bell, and eventually learning his star magic much later in life. The plan was simple: halt Yuno's growth just enough that when time came for the two to face off, Yuno would be the most powerful wizard in the Clover Kingdom, but still far weaker than Lucius, allowing him to turn Yuno into his most powerful paladin yet, making his victory all but guaranteed. But that's not how things played out. And no, despite all of his planning, all of his scheming, Lucius fell just short of achieving his goal, as Yuno has not only gotten stronger than he expected, but he's gotten even stronger than the strongest version of Yuno Lucius's future sight foresaw. And it's not just Yuno, Noelle has also far surpassed the power she was supposed to have, Mariel Yona was supposed to lose to Morris rather quickly, and Fugoyan was supposed to have died back when he was taken by the Eye of the Midnight Sun. Nothing is going the way Lucius planned for it to. Sure, his paladins are doing their part in taking down many of the kingdom's heavy hitters, but with three of their arguably strongest wizards still in action, along with Yuno pushing him back, Lucius is for the first time actually starting to panic, as he realizes that the cause of everything going wrong is due to one single person, Asta. Asta's mere existence in this world has completely shattered all of Lucius's plans. Just by existing, he has inspired each of these characters to surpass what should have been their limits and achieve powers even a man who could see the future couldn't predict. And when you think about it, it actually makes sense why Lucius couldn't see any of this coming, because he's not able to see Asta's future, which means he wouldn't have been able to see the timeline where Asta influenced those around him to keep getting stronger. It also explains why Sister Lily didn't know Asta was still alive when she met him in the Land of Rising Sun. It's not that Lucius chose to hide that information from her, it's just that he didn't know himself. Which also inadvertently means another win for the Reason 7, because since Lucius had no idea Asta was still alive, that meant he sent his paladins there to deal with them and Ryu, meaning that they're actually so powerful that if they were to join the Clover Kingdom's wizards in opposing him, it would mean trouble for its plan. But getting back to Asta, there's something about him that makes him completely invisible to Lucius's future sight, and while we'll go over what I think that is in another video, what that does mean is that when he makes his grand return to the Clover Kingdom, Lucius will be in for even more of a shock than he currently is. But the big question is, when that time comes, whose side will Yuno be on? Because while Yuno is gaining the lead in this tug-of-war match between himself and Lucius, he does mention that he has to finish things quickly, because fighting at full power and using Neverland to boost all his allies at the same time is quickly draining his mana. And if he runs out before he takes down Lucius, that will leave him wide open to be turned into a paladin. Honestly, I'd say at this point it's 50-50. Either Yuno will hold out long enough to force Lucius to retreat, or he'll run out of mana and be turned before him and Asta can reunite. And if it ends up being the latter, that just means that fans will finally get the long-awaited fight between the two that we've been waiting for. And now that Yuno's unlocked the final version of his Spirit Dive, notice, the fight will be much closer than we could have imagined. Although, it does bring up the question of whether or not he'd actually be able to use the Spirit Dives once he's turned into a Paladin, because I would imagine that if his soul is manipulated in any way, then his contract with Bell would be null and void, though technically Bell's contract is with the L Soul inside of Yuno, so does that mean as long as Lucius doesn't interact with that at all, the contract will stay intact? But also, in that case, then Bell would have full control over faculties, and will she willingly help Yuno when he's being controlled by someone else, or will she basically refuse to give him access to her powers until he got turned back into the normal Yuno? With everyone else, it's completely easy to figure out exactly how this paladin name would affect him, but when it comes to Yuno, it is actually pretty complicated because he's one of the few characters in the series who actually has two souls in one body. And now, there is more to go over from this chapter, but I want to save those topics for other videos. But before I end this one, I do want to mention that I am only 100 subscribers away from reaching 1000, and I would really appreciate your help in reaching that milestone. Thanks, and this will be the only time for the foreseeable future that I ever mention it. So, once again, thanks for helping me reach it. Anyway, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.